Shut your eyes and tune in. Catch the faint wail of foghorns from New York's harbor, the steady grind of subway trains burrowing under Manhattan, and the ceaseless rush of countless shoes pounding the sidewalks in Times Square. This is New York, the world's unclaimed powerhouse, a towering beast of metal and windows that refuses to rest. But suppose we rewind the clock. Suppose we strip away the blacktop layers, chisel off the cement, and dissolve the high rises until just the rough, untamed contours of the island are left. Allow me to transport you more than 360 years into the past, to 1660. Back then, the city's noises weren't motors or alarms, but the steady bang of a shipwright's hammer, the whisper of old-growth oak woods, and the briny crash of the Atlantic on a spotless coast that the Loppy people called Mannahatta, later stylized in writings as Mannahatta or Manhattan. Right at the island's southern end, a peculiar small settlement is emerging, marked by sharp Dutch rooftops and windmills spinning idly in the ocean gusts. Step into New Amsterdam. It went beyond a mere outpost. It was a budding powerhouse, the spot where drive, variety, and unflinching realism first merged to shape the essence of America. Drawing from the renowned 1660 Castello plan, we're venturing into the slushy lanes of New Amsterdam during its height to grasp how this modest hub laid the groundwork for every major city on the planet now. Our exploration kicks off at the farthest southern point where Fort Amsterdam looms as a quiet guardian along the Hudson River. Picture yourself atop its dirt and rock walls. This place wasn't some grand European fortress built for show. It served as a rugged all-in-one hub, barracks for soldiers, storage for furs, and the colony's command post. There, Director General Peter Stuyvesant, the leader with the silver-reinforced peg leg, peers across the waterway. Stuyvesant didn't shine as a suave diplomat. He ran operations for the Dutch West India Company, turning New Amsterdam into what amounted to a business venture in its early stages. Within the fort's walls, organized disorder reigns. Clerks hustle to catalog beaver skins, the era's prized commodity headed for European buyers. Disputes flare up in various tongues. French from fleeing Huguenots, along with German, English, and the rough deal-making Dutch spoken by those in charge. Beyond the fort's entrance lies a wide public square, a clear expanse for trading and meetings. It would evolve into Bowling Green under English rule in the 1700s. Nowadays, that spot sits close to Wall Street's famous bull statue. Yet in 1660, it functioned as the community's open hub, ideal for livestock sales, sharing updates, and catching a breather. This area pulsed as the colony's core for politics and society, where vital choices on survival got debated around rough-hewn benches, reeking of ale and pipe tobacco. Moving from the fort's rigid vibe, we stroll down Pearl Street, the vital path tracing the East River's edge. Its name. It came from the abundance of oyster shells along Manhattan's shores, gleaming like gems under daylight. This neighborhood housed the upper crust, the trading barons of the New World. Glance at the homes. If you pictured rough-hewn shacks from old pioneer tales, think again. The Dutch transplanted their Amsterdam style overseas. These dwellings stretch narrow and high, with vibrant red and yellow brick fronts and staircase-like gables climbing upward. Not all the bricks were fired locally. Many shipped over as goods or ship ballast from across the sea. For a prosperous trader such as Cornelius Steinvik, a residence meant more than cover. It advertised his success. Enter one, and opulence hits you. Fine woven carpets from Persia underfoot, delicate blue and white china from the East on shelves, and sturdy wooden chests packed with precise account books. In New Amsterdam, prestige hinged not on aristocracy, but on your ties to the Dutch global commerce web. That connection defined everything. Still, New Amsterdam catered to more than just the rich. We veer toward Stone Street, the initial city thoroughfare, to get cobblestones after locals demanded it, chipping in funds since the sludge and grit were overwhelming daily routines. Here lies the true spirit of the place. The inns. By the mid-1600s, visitors noted, often with grumbles, that drinking spots dominated. A huge portion of the settlement's energy and structures centered on booze. The reason? Taverns doubled as social hubs, deal-making spots, and information exchanges combined. Envision entering one as the sun dips low. The atmosphere hangs heavy with aromas of seared meats and haze from extended clay pipes. A mariner hailing from the Caribbean spins yarns about vessels overflowing with sugar. Meanwhile, a German artisan haggles with a Long Island grower about lumber costs. New Amsterdam was conducting an unprecedented social trial, pragmatic acceptance, upon the arrival of the initial Jewish exiles to Manhattan in 1654, escaping oppression in Brazil. Peter Stuyvesant sought to drive them out. Yet the Dutch company's leaders in Holland vetoed his plan, permitting them to stay, not out of noble principles but through a shrewd, profit-focused assessment. From that point, the template emerged. In New Amsterdam, personal beliefs counted for less than one's economic contributions. This laid the groundwork for the multiculturalism that New York proudly claims today. Now glance toward the windmills rotating atop the elevated terrain. Far from mere picturesque Dutch vistas, they served as vital engines sustaining an expanding settlement, milling flour, draining water, and aiding the labors of constructors and shipwrights. The rasp of saws, the pound of mallets, and the whistle of breezes through fabric sails formed an early industrial harmony. New Amsterdam thrived as a hub of creators and builders. The place buzzed with relentless activity. Appropriately, the very term hustle derives from Dutch origins. Rather than erecting grand churches or divine memorials, they invested in essentials. They constructed docks, levees, and functional channels. Most notably, they dug a waterway straight through the settlement's heart to give vessels quicker access to storage facilities. What is now Broad Street once flowed as that canal, the Heere Gracht. Picture modest craft, loaded with pelts and cereals, drifting amid lines of sturdy brick dwellings, evoking a utilitarian Venice. More about efficiency than enchantment, and revolutionary precisely because of it. Still, this affluence cast long shadows we dare not overlook. New Amsterdam formed a stratified community. At its base stood enslaved individuals transported from neighboring territories or straight from Africa. Under Dutch governance, though, numerous, enjoyed an odd half-free condition. They might possess property and wed lawfully, yet they had to labor for the company on demand, their existence tethered to enforced servitude. Some of the first documented black landowners in the colony operated modest plots north of the settlement. Near present-day Greenwich Village, areas that doubled as a protective frontier amid volatile surroundings. Ties with the Lapi people simmered with perpetual strain. The pelt commerce yielded vast wealth, but settlers' intrusion onto traditional territories sparked violent clashes. That's why we turn northward to the settlement's key defensive feature, the wall. This barrier arose from dread, a stockade and mound hastily assembled. Timber logs and fortifications spanned from the East River to the Hudson. Designs specified stout stakes up to 12 feet tall, but the enclosure acted more as a crude bulwark than an imposing masonry barrier. It marked the edge of European settlement on the island. Beyond it stretched the wilds, the Boeraaien or homesteads, and the territories of the native inhabitants. Local militia, bakers, blacksmiths, traders, guarded the earthen track beside it, rifles primed. History's profound twist, however, is that this wall never repelled a substantial overland assault. Rather, in 1664, peril arrived by water. A modest English fleet, including 4 frigates, materialized in the bay. their guns trained squarely on the bastion and the vulnerable homes. Peter Stuyvesant itched for battle, but the town's traders excelled at their specialty, reckoning the odds. They saw that conflict would ravage their enterprises and fortunes. Yielding to his constituents' urging, Stuyvesant endorsed the capitulation terms. The wall later fell to expansion, and its adjacent route evolved into the planet's money hub, Wall Street. Though New Amsterdam endured just 40 years under that name, its influence endures forever. When the English seized control and rechristened it New York for the Duke of York, they could not wipe away the Dutch essence. They took charge of a locale molded by trade and variety. They soon grasped that a flexible, commerce-fueled approach could sustain the urban pulse. New York stood out as exceptionally varied among English outposts, despite subsequent regulations and governance clouding true religious liberty. That's what sets New York apart from somber Boston or serene Philadelphia. New York sprang from corporate roots, nurtured on gain and multiplicity. Gaze at a map of today's Lower Manhattan, and those winding lanes persist, echoes of Dutch allotments. The high-rise living of contemporary Manhattan descends from those cramped 17th-century homes. Even quintessentially, American symbols like cookies or Santa Claus trace back as bequests from New Amsterdam's dwellers. New Amsterdam cracked the challenge that continues to challenge us in the present day. How can individuals from every corner of the globe, speaking varied tongues and holding diverse convictions, coexist in a tightly packed environment? Their solution didn't come in the form of an inspiring oration on freedom. Instead, it was a straightforward agreement. As long as we exchange goods and thrive collectively, harmony in living becomes possible. While Rome rose through military might, New York emerged from a binding agreement. This is precisely what makes gazing across the harbor from Battery Park these days so profound. You're not merely glimpsing history, but witnessing the origins of our contemporary era, where national boundaries fade amid the surge of international commerce. We've now completed our tour through New Amsterdam as it stood in 1660, from the sturdy bricks lining Pearl Street to the imposing cannons guarding the fort. Every bit of this ground whispers tales of endurance and drive. Though New Amsterdam has faded from the charts, its essence endures in the heartbeat of every New Yorker, in the high-stakes buzz of the stock market, and in the inclusive spirit of a metropolis that forever opens its arms to newcomers chasing prosperity. What if the Dutch had held firm and never yielded? Might New York have transformed into a Western Venice, laced with waterways, or remained the powerhouse of industry it is today?